Adam, it's so great to chat today. 10 years ago, when I was publishing my memoir, you put me in touch with your own book agent, plus a number of other top agents you knew. And I always appreciated that kindness then. It's been great following your career since then. So it's especially great to talk today.
Well, I'm delighted to find ways to be helpful, and we'll see if today lives up to that.
You have an uncanny ability to do just that. And as you think back, Adam, on the classes you've taught, the books you've written, the companies you've consulted with, and the speeches you've given, what lessons have you learned that you would most like to pass on to others?
Oh man, this is like choosing a favorite child. Don't know. I think there's so many lessons that I think are important. It's hard to know where to start. But I think honestly, the for me, maybe a meta lesson has been that excuse me, let me try that again. Yeah, I'll start here. I think a meta lesson is that you should be careful about listening to other people's advice because they can only tell you what's worked for them, and it may or may not apply to you. I think so many people are, obsessed with just collecting wisdom and lessons from people around them, forgetting that, other people have not taken the exact same path as you. They don't share your exact weaknesses, your identical strengths. And so it's hard for them to give customized guidance. Now, of course, if they know you well, it's easier for them to stop projecting their own perspective onto you and take a little bit more of your viewpoint. But even then, we've all received bad advice from people we
Yeah.
know well and trust. And this is, Nate, part of what I like about your project so much is by collecting advice and lessons from lots of different people, it allows your listeners to triangulate and
Yeah.
say, okay, here's a common pattern across lots of different perspectives. Maybe that applies to a lot of people. And here are two people who actually have competing views. Let me try to reconcile those and figure out which one is more relevant to me.
How did you first learn that lesson?
I actually think my mom taught it to me accidentally. She, I was, I had no idea what I wanted to do with my career. I felt like there were a lot of jobs I found interesting, but there wasn't one that was that was grabbing me, saying you have to do this one. And then the summer before my senior year of college, it clicked, and I realized I loved psychology. I was passionate about sharing knowledge, and I wanted to pay forward some of the extraordinary educational experiences that my professors had created for me. And I was so excited. I told my mom that I wanted to be a professor, and she said, "Well, don't do that. Teaching's boring." And my mom was a teacher, and she didn't like having to stand up and perform every day.
Yeah.
And didn't quite she didn't quite realize that the kind of teaching I was opting into was really different, where I wouldn't be in the classroom all day every day. I would be choosing the lessons that I taught. I would be mixing in research and lots of writing and all kinds of other projects. And that if I didn't like my job, it was my own fault because I would get to design it. So that was probably when I first picked up that lesson.
I love this too because your mom, who brings you into this world, who knows you as well as anybody, who has done probably more good for you than maybe anybody on planet Earth, got that wrong for you. And that just shows how kind of relevant this advice can be.
Thanks, Mom.
It
You know what though?
reminds-
Sometimes we really discover our own motivations by pushing against people who don't quite see them.
yeah. Well,
So I liked that challenge. Even just listening to how strongly I pushed back. I guess it was a version of self-perception theory. Like I found out what I valued through
yeah.
listening to what I said.
Yeah, so great. It reminds me when I graduated from law school, I decided to not take the bar because I knew I wanted to do a PhD and I didn't want to sink 2 months of my life into studying for a bar when I never planned to practice law. And I met this kind of the other extreme of your story. I met some random attorney. I never met the guy. And within 5 minutes of talking, he was telling me that I most definitely needed to take the bar or I would regret it my whole life. And I was just thinking, like, who are you? You know nothing about me. So whether they don't know us at all, or it's your mom who knows you intimately, people can still get this wrong.
Well, I think actually your research has helped to shed light on this, right? You've published multiple papers on overconfidence,
Yeah.
and it seems to be the case that once people have an experience, and they discover that something is really important for them, it's hard for them to have the humility to know that it might not be a life-changing lesson or experience for everyone else.
Yeah, so great. Okay, any other lessons you would most like to pass on?
I think, I guess I'm struck by how common it is for people to, from a career standpoint, say, you know, the best thing you can do for the world is to achieve success and then start giving back. And I think that's backward. I think that it's through helping other people that you often achieve your greatest success. And you don't have to wait until you've accomplished a great deal and accumulated a lot of status, power, and wealth before you have something to contribute. So I would love to see people, even as simple as, offering your mentor a bit of feedback on something they're working on. Trying to find somebody else who's trying to follow in your footsteps and giving them a bit of guidance. There's no reason we all can't start doing that from day one.
I learned this lesson from you a long time ago, and my memory of this was, and I might get some of the details wrong, and you can help me. Um, there was a time in your career where I mean, you've always gotten a lot of emails, and you're kind of well known for being very responsive and helpful, even though, I mean, now maybe the inbox is just overflowing to unimaginable levels. But at one point in your career, if I remember right, you viewed this as like it was frustrating. Like you couldn't stay on top of email, and you're getting all these requests, and then you had a shift in your mindset and thought, like, this is a chance to help. And just by shifting your mindset, it became an opportunity. I don't know if I got the facts right, but I adopted that about 5 years ago. So now when I get an email from a student, I look forward to that opportunity to help them out. Am I botching those details, or is that somewhat accurate?
No, not botching them at all. I don't think that every email is going
Right.
to be a joy. That would be a stretch for all of us. But
Right.
I think I guess I remember the mindset shift happening when somebody said to me, other people's emails are not your priority; they're their priority. Like, so your inbox is just other people's priorities. And I looked at my inbox, and it was filled with people giving me, interesting ideas, sharing their knowledge, sending an article that I might find interesting, and then also people reaching out asking for my help. And part of my mission as a professor is to try to be as helpful as I can. So
Yeah.
the idea that this was solely a burden when it could be an opportunity to do something meaningful for someone else, it just struck me as wrong. So I said, okay, let me at least recognize that some of the emails I get are a chance to have an impact, maybe in a small way, but usually a 5-minute email for me is a chance to make a lasting difference for someone else. And I've hated them less with that perspective. How's that?
Yeah, well, that has certainly helped me just hearing your approach and shifting my mindset. And I love this lesson of don't wait to give back. In my ethics class, I asked the students, how would you define success and what do you want to do with your life, basically. And just every semester, so many and too many, in my opinion, just say I want to get rich and then retire and give back. And so then we talk through kind of this idea of uh, serving and helping all along the way.
Yeah, it's ironic that if you ask people what their highest values in both work and life are, helping others is consistently at the top. So why would you save that for
Yeah.
post retirement when you could be doing it day in and day out?
Yeah. Okay. Any final lesson you would like to share as we wrap up here, Adam?
I think the maybe the one other I would put on the table is, I would say, I'm this one is still something I'm grappling with right now, which is sometimes the best lessons you learn are are in admitting what you don't know. And look, I like to have answers. I like to be knowledgeable. I like to have something worth sharing. But there's something really dissatisfying with with knowing exactly what you need to do all the time. It makes you feel like you're just executing your routine as opposed to learning. And so I guess maybe this is, I don't even have the right language for it yet, but I guess one of the lessons I'm in the process of learning right now at this very moment is it's okay to have an experience and not be sure what the lesson is. And sometimes it's the process of trying to figure out the lesson that ends up being more valuable than the conclusion you reach. And I think maybe this is just my way of excusing the fact that I prefer to learn from other people's experiences than having to live them all myself. But sometimes they don't really, other people tell you a lesson and it doesn't land until you've gone through it personally.
Are there any examples of this that you can share to make this a little more concrete for me?
No. Yes, definitely. So let me try to give a clear one. I think yeah, okay, I've got an easy one, which is yeah, let me say that a little differently. I would say sometimes people give you really good advice, but you have to live the lesson to internalize it.
Okay.
I remember an early mentor telling me, you know, one of the dangers of loving your work is you might end up working all the time. And
Hmm.
I wasn't really fazed by it. I was like, I'm passionate about my job. It doesn't feel like work. So I'm not going to worry too much about that. And then I remember when I think it was about 2 months after our oldest was born. I'm like I'm feeling this pressure on Saturday morning to be waking up first thing, analyzing some data. Like, why am I doing this? I don't I
Hmm.
don't have a boss telling me I need to work. I and I'm not doing it just because it's fun. I'm starting to feel a sense of compulsive workaholism. This is not who I want to be. And it really doesn't matter how many people tell you that. It's at least for me, it didn't. I at that point I'd had multiple people kind of issue that warning, and I didn't pay any attention to it. And I have these little moments when I regret not listening to it sooner, because I feel like I missed out on part of the anticipation of becoming a parent. And maybe, yeah, I guess, yeah. So I guess what I'm trying to, the way I'm trying to reconcile that now is to realize, hey, at least I learned it early. I didn't, I think some people wake up and, wow, my kids are teenagers and
Yeah.
I'm regretting how hard I worked, or my kids are grown up and I wish I'd been home more. And I feel grateful that, that it didn't take that long for me to learn the lesson. But even so, it's just a reminder that, sometimes you don't really get other people's lessons until you've made the mistakes that you're warning. Sorry. Sometimes you don't really appreciate other people's lessons until you've made the mistakes they're warning you against.
Yeah, it just makes me think of being a parent. And I mean, this podcast, the genesis of this podcast was to like share lessons with my kids. And I just hope that they can internalize them. But there's just no substitute for experience. And sometimes you just have to live the lesson yourself. But by at least hearing the lesson, hopefully when we're a little better at pattern recognition so that when we are experiencing, we can hopefully recognize it just a little bit sooner.
You got it.
Well, Adam, this was awesome. I love the lessons. I look forward to sharing these with my children, my students, trying to apply these lessons in my own life. So I just appreciate your kindness and wisdom and want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, Nate.